During the pandemic, the challenge for Aron, AMC Theaters, one of the world's largest chains and not a customer allowed in. 14 years ago, a different challenge, making the 76ers relevant again.
By 2010, when the ownership group had come in, Philadelphia sports fans were still in love with the Flyers and the Eagles and the Phillies, but the Sixers were an afterthought.
The thoughts of former 76ers CEO Aron on the Sixers, the movies, and more. Next on Fresh 24. Aron, the pride of Abington High School, former 76ers CEO for 2 years starting in 2011, the first year of the current ownership group, by the way. These were the Doug Collins years, as fans might recall. Now you're the CEO and chairman of the board of AMC Entertainment Holdings. AMC, of course, the movie theaters. Tons of experience in the travel and entertainment industries. Lots to talk about, Aron. Welcome to Fresh 24.
Marc, number one, thank you for the intro. It's nice to be here. And it's especially nice to be here because of you. I have such fond memories of you as our television broadcaster when I was running Sixers. And I stayed a partial owner of the team for a dozen years. And even though I have relocated to Kansas City, which is 1,500 miles away, because that's where AMC was founded 100 years ago. I still was a Uber Sixers fan, as in a big Sixers fan, not Uber, the transport company. And I would watch tons of Sixers games on my NBA League Pass and loved hearing your calls of the game. So it's very nice to be with you.
You're very kind. Thank you. We're going to get into plenty of Sixers stuff. Don't you worry about it. You were there for the very start of what's become the process. Certainly we'll talk about that. But I got to tell you, I'm been dying to ask you, ever since we thought about having you a guest on Fresh 24, what was it like navigating AMC, the largest theatrical exhibitor in the world during the pandemic?
Well, let's see. Are you allowed to curse on a podcast?
Why not? Why not? It's my podcast. If it helps.
It was 4 years of sheer hell. That's what it was like running the world's largest movie theater chain during COVID. So let me take you back in time a little bit. Oh, Marc, COVID. How do you even begin to describe what we've been through at AMC Entertainment the last 4 or 5 years? Let me just give you a little background to tell you where we were when COVID arrived. The company that I joined, AMC Movie Theaters, which I joined in 2016, was the second largest movie theater chain in the United States, second to a theater chain called Regal Cinemas. They were about 25% bigger than we were. We had no theaters outside the United States. And within a year and a half, we had turned AMC into the largest movie theater chain in the United States, the largest movie theater chain in Europe, and the largest movie theater chain in the world. So we were, and we had 4 wonderful full years of success where we were growing, we were innovating, life was pretty good. And then comes COVID. And our company prior to COVID was doing about $5.5 billion of revenue in a year. And we had about 1,000 movie theaters scattered throughout the United States and Europe, and some in the Middle East. And in the span of a week, we had to shut every single movie theater that we had. And they stayed shut for somewhere between 5.5 and 12 months, depending upon the jurisdiction and local law. And so our revenues went from multiple billions of dollars a year to literally nothing in the span of a week. Nothing. And we entered COVID with $600 million in the bank, which for a company of AMC size was a lot of cash. But by about May, we would have the COVID shut our theaters in March of 2020. By April, we realized that somewhere in May or June, we would have completely run through that $600 million of cash. We'd be out of cash, and we would have had to file for bankruptcy. And that did not happen, although there was lots of press rumors that AMC might fail. But it didn't fail because we've raised so much money in the last 4 or 5 years to stay afloat. Over $5 billion of capital was raised, to some of it debt, some of it equity, to make sure that AMC survived COVID. And ironically, we still have about $500 million of cash in the bank, which is sort of pretty close to the pre-COVID number. But we had to raise $5 billion of money to get there. So it was hard, it was stressful, and we really had to thread a needle because so many of our competitors found their way into bankruptcy court. The number 2 and 3 movie theater chains in Europe failed. The second largest movie theater chain in the United States went into bankruptcy court. A lot of smaller chains went into bankruptcy court, but not AMC. And through it all, we've kind of continued to pioneer and innovate and lead the way. And we are still the biggest movie theater chain in the world. It was hard work to keep it that way, but we kept it that way, and it was a successful effort.
Honest question that is boilerplate for you, but a lot of people probably don't know. Let's take a movie, I don't know, Gladiator 2, it debuts, and that's the movie, and you have the theaters. How does the deal get done? How do the finances work? How do you get paid, and how do the movie makers get paid?
Sure, I'm happy to educate your Fresh 24 audience. The deals started getting done over 100 years ago. AMC was founded by 3 vaudeville actors who were tired of being on the road, and they bought a movie theater in 1920 in Kansas City, Missouri, that showed silent movies. And 105 years later, we have close to 1,000 theaters scattered around the world. We've been in business and in partnership with major Hollywood studios for all of that time. And we have an agreement up front, which we negotiate every year, with each and every major and minor studio, that we're going to show all of the movies that they release. And we agree on film terms. Their responsibility is to make the movie and market the movie. Our responsibility is to operate the theaters and create a wonderful guest experience for the people coming to watch those movies, as well as to market the availability of those movies at our theaters. We bring the movie studios bring us movies, and we bring customers to theaters, and it's a marriage of those two communities, the studio community and the theater community, that make up collectively the movie ecosystem. Our deal with every studio is cut at the beginning of the year for all the films in their slate that year. There is a split of revenues, and these are our deals by studio are never really released individually, but the amount that we pay the studios is publicly released every quarter as part of our financials. In round numbers and on average, the studios get just slightly more than half of the revenues that occur in the theater from ticket sales, and the movie theaters themselves keep just under half of the ticket sales that go on at theaters. We get all of the food and beverage revenue that's not split with studios.
So let me ask you, if I can interject.
That's how the money flows.
If I can interject, do you make more on the popcorn than you do on the tickets?
It used to be pre-COVID It used to be 51-49, 51%, 49%. We made more money from selling the tickets than the food, but they were very close. And what's happened amongst consumers since the theaters reopened back in the end of 2020 and the last several years is people have decided to splurge again, and our food and beverage sales per head are up about 80% from where they were pre-COVID. So now, currently, as we film this in 2024, 2025, it's more like 60 to 65% of our revenue comes from, or I should say our EBITDA, not our revenue. 60 to 65% of our revenue comes from the sale of everything at our concession stands, with the balance being movie ticket sales.
The streaming environment, and by the way, if I see another Plus channel, I think I'm going to pass out. But how does the ability to sit at home, take your shoes off, rent a movie for, I don't know, $3 to $6 affect the way you market AMC?
Well, people have been loving going out to cinemas in this country, the United States, for a century. And all the way through the last 100 years, people have been predicting the demise of movie theaters. Radio was going to put movie theaters out of business. TV was going to put it out of business. VCRs were going to put them out of business. DVDs were going to put us out of business. Streaming is going to put us out of business. And the reality is, we're still here and we're still strong. The people, if the pandemic taught us anything, it's that we want to get out of our house or our apartment. No matter how nice your house is, no matter how nice your apartment is. Like, you don't want to be there all the time. I remember back in 2021, I finally got to go to a Home Depot. I stayed there for like 2 hours. It was like the most exciting thing I'd done in a year and a half. Yes, there are some people who prefer to see a movie in the comfort of their living room, but almost 1 billion times a year in North America, people do get off their couches at home and they do go out to a theater and they do watch a movie on the big screen. And they do it for several reasons. Number one is just to get out of the house. It's something to do. Number two, it's a cheap date. A movie theater ticket on average across the United States is about $12, which gets you 2 to 3 hours of often wonderful entertainment and amusement. Where else can you go in America and spend $12 and have a great time for a couple of hours? But also, movie theater companies have invested so much money, especially AMC. We've really led the way to make going to a theater a wonderful experience. Reclining seats 6 feet apart between rows, sound systems like that might blow you out of a theater. They're so strong and powerful. I just was in one of our AMC theaters last week and to watch a movie, and in that one auditorium there were over 400 speakers embedded in the walls of that auditorium. We've put in laser projection in. We've now put it in almost 3,000 of our U.S. screens, and we're on a path to putting it in all of our U.S. screens over the course of the next several years. And the pictures are brighter and sharper. Our food is better and more varied than it ever was. We used to just sell a Coke and popcorn, and now our menus have a lot of variety. At AMC, we have a brand standard that we have Coke freestyle machines with over 140 different flavors of soft drink. We put in alcoholic bars wherever the local laws allowed us to obtain a liquor license. So in about 2/3 of our U.S. theaters, for example, we have full bars. It's not a place where you drink heavily, but it's a place where you have a drink or two and carry it in the theater, and just people have a lovely night at the theater. And then it gets to the movie itself. And there's something about seeing a movie communally with other people that makes it better. When everybody around you is laughing, the joke on screen is better. When everybody else around you is crying, the sad tale on the screen is more impactful. And so movie going is a shared experience. And the last part of this thing is when you watch a movie at home, the things get in the way. Your child comes in, your dog comes in, the phone rings. You decide you want to get up and go to the kitchen and grab something to eat or drink. You come back, you put the movie on pause. And a lot of people watching movies at home get interrupted 2 or 3 times during the span of a 2-hour movie, maybe even more. There's something about going to a theater. When you sit down in your seat, you turn everything off, and the phone gets turned off. You've already gone to the bathroom. You don't leave you've already gone to the concession stand if you want food or drink, so it's sitting right there with you. And for whatever the length of the movie is, an hour and a half to 3.5 hours, depending upon the movie, you're so totally focused on the screen and what you're watching, and you don't allow yourself to be interrupted. And there's not a lot of conversation back and forth with who you're sitting next to. There's the occasional, poke in the ribs or the occasional comment, but people really intently pay attention to what's on screen. And that notion of escaping into the filmmaker's creation without being interrupted, that's something that's very special. And in our lives, we get interrupted all the time. Going to a movie theater is one of those few times where you don't get interrupted at all.
I am going to get to your time as the CEO of the 76ers, and of course our halftime segment is just moments away, but just a couple more really quick questions. Drive-in movie theaters, you and I are old enough to remember them during their heyday. I read as many as 300 now are operating nationwide. Is there any chance of that number going up? And what, if any, involvement does AMC have in all that?
No, there's the 300 or so drive-ins that are still around. That's out of over 4,000 theaters across the United States. Hey, the drive-ins were really big in the 1950s, but the 1950s was a long time ago. And it's because of everything that I just was talking about. We've invested $500 million in putting in IMAX screens and Dolby Cinema screens just at AMC. Our sound systems are unreal. With laser projection on thousands of our screens, the pictures are so bright and sharp. And it's just not as appealing to see a movie sitting in the front seat of your car as sitting in our reclining seats with 6 feet of legroom.
You mean to tell me that sound system, the multi-million dollars or billions you may spend on sound, is actually better than that speaker that you would that you would sit on the ledge of your window and kind of roll up your window?
Well, you're dating yourself because now
I know.
Most of those drive-ins don't have that little box anymore. It's broadcast on your FM radio station. But the reason I know all this is when COVID shut all of our theaters, and people were afraid to go out anywhere, not to movie theaters or any other place out of their house. We actually looked hard at whether we should put drive-ins back in. We really looked at it hard, and we concluded it's been a dying experience for 70 years, and as you said, there are a few left. So yeah, I'm sure some operator with drive-in movie theater is going to watch this podcast and then email me outraged that I said it's a thing of yesteryear, but it's a thing of yesteryear.
All right, we'll leave that in the 50s. In a moment again, I'm going to get back to your time as the CEO of the 76ers. You arrived in 2011. Doug Collins was the head coach then. We'll talk about the early moments of the process, but first, it is now halftime, Adam. And the first part of our halftime is being brought to you by Garage Beer. It's the Garage Beer 6-pack of questions. Garage Beer, beer-flavored beer. Find some near you at drinkgaragebeer.com. I am going to give you a choice between two things. Just blurt out the answer. I know you're a Philly guy at heart. Are you ready?
I am ready. Born and raised in the northern burbs of Philadelphia. I'm
The
a
pride
big,
of Abington High School.
big Philly guy. Yeah. Go ahead.
All right, here we go. Cheesesteak or soft pretzel?
Cheesesteak.
Center City or
Wit.
Wit. Oh,
Wit.
yeah. Thank you. Center City or South Jersey?
They're both great, but Center City.
Gritty or Philly fanatic?
Franklin.
Oh, a very politically correct answer. Meek
Yeah.
Mill or Hall and Oates?
Taylor Swift. There you go.
And by the way, you're taking too long with these. This is supposed to, it's just supposed to blurt out the answer. Dr. J or
it's all things Taylor Swift, baby.
Yeah, right. Dr. J or you're in Kansas City, no wonder. Dr. J or Allen Iverson throwback?
I know you just want a quick answer, but one of the things I'm most proud of in the 2 years that I ran the team, from the 2 seasons I ran the team, 2011-12 and 2012-13, neither Allen nor Doc had much contact with the franchise in the latter years of Comcast ownership of the Sixers before Josh Harris and Dave Blitzer bought the team. And as CEO of the team, I reached out to both and brought both of them back to the Wells Fargo Center and brought Dr. J back as a Goodwill ambassador to the team right away and started a path where my successor, Scott O'Neill, we brought Allen back to Wells Fargo Center for some playoff games. And my successor, Scott O'Neill, brought Allen Iverson back as a Goodwill ambassador for the Sixers. So the right answer there is both. Definitely. Both. If you were a Sixers fan in the 80s, it was Dr. J. If you were a Sixers fan in the aughts and in the teens, it was AI. But they're both wonderful, and they're both so part of Philadelphia 76ers sports lore. How could you choose one over the other?
And you did not. The 6-pack of questions brought to you by Garage Beer, beer-flavored beer. Find some near you at drinkgaragebeer.com. I'm going to give you a handful of artists from my music library, and you tell me if you have them or not. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
John Williams.
Yes.
Maurice Jarre.
Not so much.
Jerry Goldsmith.
Yes.
Hans Zimmer.
Definitely yes. Crimson Tide. What a great movie. And a lot of other films that he wrote the scores for, but I'm a big fan of his Crimson Tide score.
Henry Mancini.
Yeah, like Marc, you and I have been around for a long time. I just had my 70th birthday, and
congratulations.
Thank you. And I know that you broadcast for the Sixers for 27 years, so you aren't a spring chicken either. Even for someone as old as me, Henry Mancini is a little before my time, but he did write some beautiful music. But so the answer is yes, but that's in the past.
Yes, and the theme, and you caught on very quickly, was great film composer, so that was well done.
Right.
All right, let's talk Sixers. You are working at Apollo Global Management. It's an asset management fund, for those who don't know. It was started by, among others, the 76ers current managing partner, Josh Harris. When did you, in the halls of Apollo, first get an inkling that the Sixers were for sale and that Josh Harris was interested?
Well, I only worked part-time for Apollo. I was what's called a senior operating partner at Apollo, which means it was my responsibility to try to find companies they might want to acquire. And then if they acquired them, try to make them better. And I had been given a charge that, given my time in the travel industry, maybe you could find some cruise lines that Apollo could invest in. And in my first year and a half with Apollo, which was going back to 2006, we found 3 cruise lines to acquire. Norwegian Cruise Line, Oceania Cruises, and Regent Seven Seas Cruises. We put them all together into one company. And I stayed on the board of that company, Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings, the 3 lines, for 16 years. So I was involved for a long time. So I actually So I actually found about the Sixers being for sale when it was announced that Josh bought the team. And I found out from my son, who paid a lot of attention to all things on Twitter. And he said, "Dad, you're not gonna believe it, but Josh Harris just bought the Sixers." And I said, "My Josh Harris just bought the Sixers?" And sure enough, I was pretty much considered a sales and marketing expert at Apollo. I'd been the chief marketing officer of many companies before. I was the chief marketing officer of Hyatt Hotels, the chief marketing officer of United Airlines. And in the companies that I had run prior to the Sixers, Norwegian Cruise Line being one of them, Vail Resorts, the ski resort operator in Colorado being another, marketing successfully was my hallmark. So I very quickly got an outreach from Josh saying, this is a good story, by the way, and not many people know this story. It's not a well-known fact, but the Sixers don't sell out their stadium anymore. And I'm curious if you have any advice for the new ownership group about what we can do to rekindle fan interest in the 76ers. And because Josh was one of the founders of Apollo and I was on retainer to Apollo, I took that request quite seriously. So I thought about it for like 3 weeks, and I came to his office with a yellow legal pad, and like every line on that yellow legal pad was full of ideas, and it was like 4 or 5 pages long of things that I thought the Sixers could do to go back and become a darling of Philadelphia sports fans again. And that meeting with Josh lasted over 3 hours. And at the end of it, somehow I got talked into chucking everything that I was doing in the world. I was living in Miami at the time, where sort of the cruise capital of the United States. Moved back to Philadelphia, my hometown, where I spent the first 18 years of my life prior to leaving Philadelphia to go off to college. Moved back to Philadelphia, joined the team as the first CEO of the new ownership group, joined the small ownership group that were investors in the team. And so I first heard about it when it was announced. A few weeks later, I was in there giving advice to Josh Harris and David Blitzer about things that the Sixers could do to make Philadelphia a 4 sports team town again. When I was a kid growing up in Abington, people loved the 76ers and the Flyers and the Phillies and the Eagles. And I don't want to say 4 sports team town because there's the MLS team as well. So maybe it's a 5 sports team town now. But by 2010, when the ownership group had come in, Philadelphia sports fans were still in love with the Flyers and the Eagles and the Phillies, but the Sixers were an afterthought. And I'm very proud of the fact that I implemented so many of those ideas from that legal pad. So many. And we did it well enough that by our 6th or 7th home game of the 2011-12 season, we were selling out again. And Philadelphia sports fans rekindled their romance with the Philadelphia 76ers. There's no doubt about that.
And one thing that helped was the 2011-12 season. The Sixers were winning. Doug Collins was the head coach. Of course, the storied playoff series with both Chicago and Boston. The Bulls, a 60-plus win team, but Derrick Rose got hurt. The Sixers were able to eke out a win in the playoff series. Then they take on Boston. This team was only a few years removed from a championship, and they took the Celtics to 7 games, and I think they were down 3 with about, under 4 minutes to play, and suddenly the unlikely hero was Rajon Rondo. But despite all that, there was no superstar on the Sixers team. It had a questionable upside. Do you recall thinking that exact thought as a member of Sixers management?
I recall every minute of the 2011-12 and the 2012-13 seasons. I want you to imagine you're a 14-year-old teenager living in Philadelphia, and somebody said, 40 years from now, you're going to be running one of your 4 hometown teams. What a hoot. And I'll tell you, I was a sports fan all my life, but I was a casual sports fan. And when I was thinking about Josh's offer to go run the Sixers for a couple of seasons to get us back on the map, selling out our buildings again, I kept on thinking, you like basketball, but you're going to be watching a lot of basketball. Are you ready to watch a lot of basketball? I didn't miss a game for 2 years at home, and I traveled with a team on the road, about 2/3 of the road games too. And I'm telling you, I've had a lot of fun jobs over the course of my career. I've never had anything more enjoyable than running one of the hometown teams in the city where you grew up. And I used to say that I didn't live and die at every win. I lived and died on every shot.
Mm.
And it was the first season which the 11-12 season was particularly thrilling. We didn't just eke out a win over the Bulls. We beat them at home in the 6th game. We were the 8th seed that year. It was only the 2nd or 3rd time the Sixers had gone to the playoffs in a decade. And we were taking on the 1st seed, and everybody thought we were going to get crushed in the playoffs. And of all things, we won the 6th game at home on Andre Iguodala sinking 2 free throws with no time left on the clock, or I think there was 3 seconds left on the clock.
And not the world's greatest free throw shooter either.
I didn't say it, but you said it.
Yeah, well, it's written somewhere in about a half a jillion websites. But go ahead.
Yes, it is, and rightly so. But you know what? He sank the 2 most important free throws in his entire
Yes, he did.
career. And yeah, we didn't have a superstar, but we had a team. This is the 11-12 season. And we had a team that was balanced and interesting. And some of the players on that team were pretty special players. So, among them, we had Iguodala, who a couple of years later was the MVP of the playoffs for the NBA champion Golden State Warriors. We had Drew Holiday when he was very young, but Drew made the NBA All-Star team for the first time in his career during my 2-year Sixers run. And Drew, obviously has won NBA championships since with both the Bucks and the Celtics. We had Lou Williams, who had been picked as the 6th man by the NBA for several seasons, mostly when he was out in Los Angeles. So we had some really good, and there were a lot of other really interesting players on the team. Nick Vucevic, who was the star center for the Bulls later, after was a rookie during my first season with the Sixers. So we had some good players, but they played really well as a team. And it was very rare that any one of them would score 20 points in a game. Very rare. But a lot of them did. And so we worked our way back into the playoffs as the 8th seed. And as you said, we took out the 1st seed. It was only, I think, we're talking about a decade ago, and my memory's a little fuzzy, but I think it was like only the 5th time in NBA history or something.
Something like that.
Where the 8th seed had taken out the 1st seed in the first round of the playoffs. And then, as you say, we took Boston to 7, and we lost in Boston at TD Garden on the road in the 4th quarter. It was a tie game with 3 minutes to go. I mean, we could have, but it was all, yes, I know the thing about stars or no stars. Yes, I remember every second of it. Our team played its heart out, and what fun for all of Philadelphia to fall in love with the 76ers again.
However, the season after, the team won 30-some games. They missed the playoffs. Doug Collins was let go, and the process officially began that summer. I know you left the team that summer as well, but Brett Brown was hired as head coach, Sam Hinkie as president of basketball operations. Where did the idea of the process germinate?
Well, I've got to correct one fact. Doug Collins was not let go. We actually were doing everything we could think of to keep Doug Collins. I adored Doug Collins, both as a human being and as a coach, and for his affinity and affection for the 76ers. What happened in my second season, some people may famously remember, our basketball operations department traded half the team for Andrew Bynum, who the season before had been this starting center for the Western Conference in the NBA All-Star game, but his knees got very bad over the course of the summer, and he didn't play a game for the 76ers, and not a single game in the 2012-13 season. And so the team did start to lose, and Doug had told me it was going to be the fact that we had given up such talented players on the existing roster and giving up a couple of draft picks, first-round picks going forward to get Bynum, which is a trade that should have worked if you're bringing in, Bynum was only 26 years old, and you were bringing to the Sixers, he was 26 years old at the time. You're bringing to the Sixers the starting center in the NBA All-Star game for the Western Conference. That should have been a very exciting thing, but he didn't play. So Doug told me he was going to set the franchise back for years, that it would take us years to dig from the hole that the team had built by trading away so much talent, current and prospective. And he just didn't have it in him to coach a losing team. So Doug left the team of his own volition. We actually spent, I can't tell you how many hours I spent trying to get Doug to stay and continue coaching the Sixers. But the process sort of developed of its own accord as the team started losing in the 12-13 season. And then it was, I don't actually remember whether it was Sam Hinkie's idea or ownership's idea or a blending of the two. But the process did begin officially in the 13-14 season. And, that was 4 or 5 years out in wandering in the wilderness for the Sixers from a win-loss standpoint. But it did bring the team Joel Embiid, who was drafted from the team because of first-round picks who were for the Sixers. And some of our first-round picks worked out better than others. But it did bring a career talent in Embiid to Philadelphia. And of course, as you know, he adopted a nickname in the process. And since Embiid's healthy arrival, I mean, not the first season where he sat out as his broken foot recovered, but
first two.
Yeah, he's first. Yeah, you're right. First two. He's putting up like Wilt Chamberlain kind of numbers. Like really. No matter what happens, no matter how many playoff games we win or don't win, whether we do win an NBA championship, notice I still say we because I still love my Sixers. Whether we win an NBA championship or we do not, Joel Embiid is going to go down in the history books as one of the greatest 76ers of all time. There's your process. It was a tough several years. It worked out with a positive end result.
Adam, I'm glad you brought up Andrew Bynum and I think it's a fair question with all of the medical due diligence that an NBA team can go through before making a trade of that magnitude. How is it that he never played 1 second for the team?
The answer to that question, Marc, is how in the world is it possible that we could have made that trade and he didn't play 1 second for the 76ers? The number of doctors who had looked at his physical condition and the shape of it and the condition of his knees during the trade process, we had some very talented orthopods telling us he's fine and he's going to be a superstar for the 76ers like he was a superstar for the Lakers. And they were just wrong. And the fan base was like up in arms because we would keep announcing during the course of the season, it's another month. He's going to be around another month. I remember going to meet a world-renowned orthopedic surgeon who was Andrew Bynum's personal doctor. And I want to say it was January or February of 2013. So we're no pun intended, we were knee deep in the NBA season. And Bynum hadn't, the season starts in October, and it was like January, February, and Bynum hadn't played it yet. And his doctor, and this is a very important hospital in New York City, literally told us to our faces. I went with one other member of the ownership group. He'll be playing in 4 weeks, maybe 6. And that's what the doctor's been telling us all season. And of course, he didn't play a game that season. I think he tried to come back with the Cleveland Cavaliers for, barely a season or two. But basically, Andrew Bynum had to retire when he was 27 or 28 years old in the league. So it was a painful experience because we'd given up so much to get someone who had been such an NBA star. This is the time you just asked me a question like where were our stars? Like Andrew Bynum could have been and should have been our star. I remember the press conference when we announced that we traded for Bynum.
The National Constitution Center.
We held it at the National Constitution Center, and we invited the fans to come, and no one had ever done that before. Normally, when there was a player press conference, we did it in the bowels of Wells Fargo Center somewhere in a windowless cinder block room, and 12 reporters would show up, and that was it. We had like 2,000 NBA fans come to the National Constitution Center to watch the announcement of the Bynum arrival. And I remember an answer to a question that he gave. People were saying, gee, the Sixers gave up a lot for you, and you're coming to Philadelphia, it's a new city, and you're being under a lot of pressure to succeed. And nobody knew anything about his bad knees. Remember, the doctors had cleared the trade. He said, yeah, I'll be under pressure, but pressure makes diamonds, he said. And people in that room were yelling their heads off, and he didn't play a game. What? Just how is that possible? But, fate. There's an old saying in the NBA, it's why they make you play the games, right? Because there were people at the beginning of the season, they'd use all these statistical models, and they would predict exactly how many wins each team was going to make and what place every team was going to finish in. And if you're like the 8th seed, you're not going to take out the Bulls in the playoffs. And if you're in 12th place in the league, you don't have a chance of beating LeBron James. But that's why they make you play the games, because crazy stuff happens in the NBA. And one of the crazy things that happened to us was that Andrew Bynum never played.
Hey, it's Marc Zumoff. Join me and Philly sports favorite Seth Joyner, Mike Quick, MMA champ Eddie Alvarez, Joe Conklin, Dee Lynam, Matt Cord, Ricky Bowe, and the Cuz, Anthony Gargano. What a lineup. We want you to join us on the Bet Parks team. Bet Parks is the official winning partner of the Philadelphia 76ers and the only casino and sports book that yours truly, Marc Zumoff, recommends and uses. Whether your team scores or not, there's always another way to win on the Bet Parks online casino and sportsbook app. Bet Parks has your seat with a live dealer for all your favorite classic casino games. Right on your phone and wherever you are, the tailgate, the stadium, on your couch. Double down on 4th down. Make downtime fun time. Play live dealer blackjack, craps, roulette, and more while watching the game. Bet on all your favorite sports. Bet the Birds, pro football, and college football. Download the Bet Parks app right now and enjoy all the action and excitement from the casino at your fingertips. Play hundreds of exciting online slots. New users download the Bet Parks online casino app and sportsbook and get up to $1,000 casino bonus back if you're down in the first 24 hours. Casino bonus must be wagered. See betparks.com for details. Must be 21 and in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, or Michigan. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. You play for fun. You love to win. You bet. Bet Parks. Adam, certainly one of the byproducts of the process was going to be losing. Internally, how did all of you handle that?
Well, the process really began the season after I left the team. I ran the team for 2 seasons, and then I worked in Josh Harris's family office to help him acquire more teams. We bought the New Jersey Devils in the NHL, and we bought the Crystal Palace Football Club in London, in England's Premier League, what they call football in the world, what we call soccer here in the United States. So I wasn't in the team's management when the process began in the 13-14 season, but I was still an owner, and I was still working with Josh and for Josh. And, all I can say is I'm an enormous 76ers fan. I was in the 2 years I ran the team. I've been ever since. It was a dozen years ago that I left the active day-to-day CEO chair at the Sixers and to go work for Josh personally. And God, I hate losing. I just hate losing. It hurts so much. If I understood intellectually why picking up top talent through the draft could benefit the team long term, but boy, I hated every loss, and it hurt. It just hurt. And maybe rather than focusing on the losses during those early years, I'll tell you one anecdote instead. I told you we did so many things on my watch to bring sports fans back into Wells Fargo Center, not just to watch the Flyers, but to watch the Flyers and the 76ers. And some of the decisions I made back then are still very much in evidence today. Among the things that I'm particularly proud of, I was the first team in Philly to switch from WIP radio to the Fanatic, 97.5 FM. I did that because WIP had all four sports teams back on its radio station, and because I told you it was a like Phillies, Eagles, Flyers town, and the Sixers played there also. Like our games would get bumped, and when the Fanatic took us over and broadcast our games, suddenly we became their flagship team, and they've done a fabulous job with radio broadcasts of the 76ers for almost 15 years now. Another thing that I loved doing, the famous 76ers song, Here Come the Sixers. I found that song on YouTube. I personally found that song on YouTube. I mean, it'd been a big song for the Sixers like 20 years earlier, but it hadn't been used in decades. And nobody could figure out who wrote it. And I wanted to play it in the stadium. But literally, we couldn't figure out who wrote it. We checked with all these music houses, and no one had a clue. And out of the blue, somebody came forward because we put the word out in the press. We were looking for who owns the rights to this song, and the owners of the song, the guys who wrote it back in I think the 80s, might have been the 70s, but it was in the disco era. It was. A guy just sent me an email or something, said, I wrote it. And I said, do you still own the rights? Can I play it at Wells Fargo Center during games? And that theme song from the 80s, suddenly it's the theme song of the team in the teens and the 2020s, 40 years later. But one of the other things that I did, which coming back to the losing and winning question, one of the other things we did so much. We put so many great videos of the team's history on the jumbotron. We had Ayla Brown had come sing the national anthem, accompanied by the entire Philadelphia Orchestra. We brought back the parachute drop, where we're dropping things from the rafters in the stands. When I got there, they were shooting out like a dozen T-shirts a game, and these little they were throwing them by hand, or these little rifle things, air rifles. And I found the company that made the machine gun T-shirt tosses, and the first season we were throwing out like hundreds of T-shirts a game. And I remember talking to Laura Price, who's a wonderful executive of the Sixers, been with the team for decades, and said, Laura, people just go crazy in the T-shirt tosses. Can we get a bigger T-shirt cannon made, and like no one ever made it before. We went to the manufacturer, and they custom made something we called Big Bella, which was double the size of the T-shirt cannon from the year before. Like we were shooting out like 400 or 500 T-shirts a game in the crowd. People love it. But the thing that I love so much is in the casino industry, when somebody wins a jackpot, lights flash and bells go off. And when I ran Norwegian Cruise Line back in the mid-1990s, I'd hired a casino consultant. And he was explaining to me how casinos work, because I'd never run a casino before. And we had a casino on every ship. And he said, well, one of the most important things is the win celebration. And I said, what's the win celebration? He said, well, the win celebration, you know how when the jackpot, somebody hits a jackpot, bells rang and lights flash, that's you're celebrating the win. And I said, well, then I guess we need a win celebration for the 76ers. And we decided every time we won a game, in the regular season, in the 2 years that I ran the team, we shot confetti cannons off. And we made it look like, the Democratic Convention or the Republican Convention. And it cost, I'm not kidding, it cost us over $6,000 a game to clean up the confetti that would get it was shot in the air. It was now all over the place. But I thought it was just so important because we needed to celebrate a win. So I was kind of famously on Twitter, tweeting with Philadelphia 76ers, the fan base. And I averaged like 10 tweets a day for 2 years with the Sixers fan base. I remember getting one tweet towards the end of our first season. And the tweet read something like this. Dude, it's March and it's the Memphis Grizzlies and you're shooting off confetti because you won a game? And I tweeted him back and said, hey man, it's really tough to get a win in the NBA, and when you get a win, you need to celebrate it. So let's just say that Aron, I so much love more winning than losing.
Adam, we appreciate the stories, the recollections of your time as the CEO of the 76ers. We enjoyed the insights into running a major, if not the major movie chain in the world today, AMC. Thank you so much for being with us on Fresh 24.
Marc, thank you. And I want to end this podcast as I started. You were a terrific broadcaster for the Philadelphia 76ers. I made a lot of changes when I got to the team to win the fan base back. But one thing I never fooled around with was doing anything to affect your broadcast. You did such a great job. And for a dozen years after I moved away from Philadelphia, but still watched dozens and dozens of games on my home TV, I was watching your calls, and I loved every second of your career too.
You're very kind. Thank you, my friend. Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode of Fresh 24. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Check out our friends over at Philadelphia Sports Nation, a local Philadelphia sports site covering your favorite teams across blogs and social media. PHLSportsNation.com. Philadelphia Sports Nation. PHL Sports Nation. Enhancing your Philadelphia sports fan experience.